Okay, welcome to the last video of the d4 d5 complex, which essentially means looking at the Queen's Gambit. I want to make a book recommendation. A book which I really like about this subject is oops, I need to grab it here. It's called Playing the Queen's Gambit from White's point of view, and it's by Lars Schandorf, a Danish grandmaster, and he's done a very nice job of presenting the lines that a lot of lines that I recommended here are in this book. So for instance, what's in this book? He's showing the exchange variation in both forms, in this form, and also after bishop e7 he goes through the mainline Slavs as well. Let's go back. He's actually recommending to allow this, and he plays the knight e5 variation. He does a nice job of presenting the material there. He's also covering the complete Botvinnik line and also this anti-Moscow stuff. It's very sharp stuff, but I think he's done a nice job of presenting this material in an accessible fashion. It's not a really huge book. And just have a quick look. It's 250 pages for the whole Queen's Gambit. It's not comparable in depth to the likes of those books by Boris Avrukh, who's done 1,200 pages of 1d4, which is very nice. But if you really try to work with this kind of book, it's impossible to remember all this. So he's done a nice job of compressing the material in some way that you can actually read this, play through the lines, and understand most of the stuff. Against the Queen's Gambit accepted, he's also recommending e4. So a lot of stuff I just recommended is in this book. I'm not sure about what he's doing against the Chiguran. Maybe it's actually the line I mentioned, but I don't know this book by heart, but I think it's a nice starting point if you want to play a nice active repertoire against the Queen's Gambit. But what you need to keep in mind is, of course, there are some tricky people who like to play the Queen's Gambit as black, but actually don't play 1d5. Let's say they start with knight f6. There you go, c4, then e6, and now you're at a huge turning point. Knight f3 or knight f3. Oops, knight f3 or knight c3. Of course, if you keep in mind that we want to play the exchange variation against the Queen's Gambit, you just need to play knight c3. If you go knight f3 and black turns to the Queen's Gambit, you don't have the possibility now to exchange here and put the knight on e2. It's just over in this respect, this aspect. So from a repertoire point of view, you need to play knight c3. There's not much choice if you want to go into those nice lines with the exchange on d5. Okay, one question you might ask, if you have looked at the recent candidate matches in Russia. Recent, it was in May, I think, a couple of months ago. People constantly played the Queen's Gambit as black, and white players were really a little bit desperate to prove something. And now I'm telling you, okay, the Queen's Gambit is all nice for white. Well, and in those matches, black chose two different move orders. One move order which was used mainly by Kramnik was exactly this move order, and he just said, okay, I'll allow if you play knight c3, I play the Nimzo. If you play knight f3, I'll play the Queen's Gambit, I play my Lasker system and try to make a draw. And while the white player simply avoided the Nimzo and played knight f3. So if white wants to really press here, he has to allow the Nimzo in this move order. Just in terms of the Queen's Gambit, you can of course play knight f3 and search for something here, but for the sake of our repertoire, it's just essential to play knight c3 and then fight the Nimzo. The other move order which was employed, and this was done by, I think, Grishuk and Rajabov also, was bishop e7 here. So they allowed this kind of exchange variation, and I think there was actually one game where white had a slight advantage, but yeah, this also has got some prospects for white to play for an advantage, but it's still very solid. Of course, I don't know all the games played there, but the main point was that the white players were avoiding the Nimzo, because the main move order there was knight f6, e6 and then d5. Kramnik, of course, never, I think really never, allowed the exchange variation with black in this form. There are actually very few top class players who allow this line, because it just has got the reputation of being, yeah, better for white, easy to play, and the statistics are just scary at some point. If black really knows his stuff and plays really in an exact fashion, it's playable, but it's difficult. You'll experience if you study lots of games here. For instance, you can just go to the man himself, Garry Kasparov. He played the exchange variation all the time when he got the chance to do so. People rarely allowed it, because I think he's got nearly 100% score. And there are others. Just have a look at the databases or online, and you find lots of instructive games there with the exchange variation. Okay, I guess that's it for d4, d5. I recommend it. I think a really nice book. It's worth buying if you're interested in this kind of repertoire. Okay, thanks for watching, and leave any comments or questions on YouTube.